Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Bryce. Can't believe it's already the final segment of my favorite show. It's been great today. Of course, I get to be with you on Monday talking to you more about what's going on out there in the business front. Now, I have a cool story to bring from a meeting I went to learn more about the economic impact of the University of Houston on our great city. I look forward to having that conversation as well. Going to be talking this segment, though, with an author who's really alarmed by what's happening in the political and the economic front in this country of ours, and who blames him. His name's James Bennett. He's the author of a new book, America 3.0, Rebooting American Prosperity in the 21st Century. James, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm happy to be here.
So, there's only hundreds and maybe thousands of books that explain the fact that our economy is in shambles and government is the primary vehicle behind it. What's interesting is that they're written from both the left and the right. The right, of course, we all have our similar narrative that government is out of control, government's not intuitive, government is intrusive, it doesn't do the right next entrepreneurial type decision that only businesses and business owners can do. The left, on the other hand, is arguing that government isn't working because government isn't spending enough. And, of course, I can't help but laugh every time I say that with our $17 trillion debt that's bankrupting generations so many centuries away from here. Talk about mob rules literally stealing from the futures of others. So there's a lot of criticism out there on what's happening in the economy. What makes your book unique?
Well, I think what we're doing, my co-author Mike Lotus and I, that's a bit different from everyone else, is we've tried to take a much longer perspective, look at this well into the past and well into the future as far as we can do. What we see is that we are coming to the end of a cycle in American history. That's why we call the book America 3.0, Why America's Best Days Are Yet to Come, because what we said is the America of the founders was another cycle. It was America 1.0, the nation almost entirely of farmers and a few traders, very decentralized, very much governed locally, and people provided a lot of the services themselves, didn't look to the government for very much, and kept what there was of government under close local watch. When we got into the Industrial Revolution, that was America 2.0. Suddenly we had much larger cities than we ever had before. We had large numbers of people working as employees in factories. Everything was different. And a lot of the 1.0 mechanisms, which worked fine at a small scale, just weren't working for the big scale. So we went to a lot of big institutions. And the Civil War, of course, helped centralize things a lot. What that did was it exposed a lot of people to a government bureaucratic military way of doing things when they were in the military or making supplies for the military. And when they had large-scale solutions, they turned to the only model they had ever seen that could handle large numbers of people living together. So they kind of naturally turned to a bureaucratic-type solution. It solved some of the problems in the short term, but it had long-term unintended consequences, and some of these consequences didn't really show up until many decades later, and that's what we're seeing now. We're saying we are at the end of a cycle. We are at the end of the 2.0 system. Things that once worked reasonably well are no longer working. The people in charge of the system still have that 2.0 mindset. Big centralized institutions, big government.
Hey, I'm sorry to intervene, but
Sure.
We have about a 7-minute interview, and
Okay.
if you answer each question like this, you'll answer one question.
Okay.
And I do want to ask more than one question, so.
The system is failing because the things that seem to work no longer want. The people in charge are responding by what people always do when they're in charge of a failing system. They double down. They do more of the same. That's why you're having these voices from the left saying, let's spend more money. The problem
Sure.
is we haven't spent enough. The problem is we haven't used enough coercion. The problem is we haven't centralized enough. Yet every time they do that, they just make things worse. We need to go to a 3.0 system, an entirely different way of approaching things, which incorporates the best of the 1.0 of the founders and is also adapted to the kind of mass life we have today.
So, well, how do you see that happening realistically? And by the way, I think you're right about the fact that after the Civil War and the industrialization, and I really believe that one of the objectives of the Civil War was to make government bigger. I really honestly believe that. You had states who were saying, people think it has something to do with slavery. Slavery was an afterthought. Lincoln didn't discuss slavery until 3 years into the Civil War. It had to do with a power grab by the federal government on the states, and the whole nature of government itself transformed during that period of time and paved the way for the bureaucracy we have today. But how do we make a shift?
Well, I think things are going to get worse before they get better, unfortunately, because the people who are doubling down on the old failing system are still in power, and we got 3 years of this to go, and who knows what we're going to get after that. But what's going to happen is you know how the obligations of the federal, state, local governments and the big corporations are all basically unfunded. They've promised far more than they ever have the ability to pay, no matter how much they raise taxes, because we know we're at the end point of usefully raising taxes as well. So we're basically in a pre-bankruptcy situation. That's why we call for something we call the big haircut, which is a rational and orderly dissolution and reassignment of debts and making the fairest possible settlement all around. I think that people like the Tea Party, who are genuinely concerned about the debt position we've gotten ourselves into, need to orient themselves to making a one-time adjustment. And I think that as these obligations come due and can't be paid, there's going to be a huge amount of public pressure. And the point is people need to arm themselves with the right information and the right set of solutions so that we can work through this and take advantage of the wonderful things that are on the verge of happening in technology, which are going to enable a much more productive but also much more decentralized society.
Okay, so back to my question, though. How do we get this to happen in the real political world that we're in today?
Because as we come up into crisis, and we are coming into crisis, as I said, we've written promises that basically aren't going to be able to be paid, particularly in the state pension area, but also in the federal area. You have reactions like the Tea Party, people who are angry at this and want to do something productive. What they need to do is they need to channel this into a reform program, which we lay out in the book, the specific policy details of where we should go. But you need to channel this anger into a productive restructuring of society, cutting back a lot of the tasks of the federal government, returning them to state and local. In some cases, we've advocated dividing some of the largest, most bureaucratic states like New York and California into a number of smaller states that would be more manageable by their citizens. There's a whole set of things that can be done to take advantage of the new productive capabilities coming along. So it's a matter of educating the anger that's out there and channeling it into productive restructuring.
Yeah. Sounds like, though, it's somewhat arbitrary. It almost sounds like technocrats for conservatives. Is what it kind of sounds like. And you know what I'm talking about when I talk about technocrats that the Democrats have, that all of it requires a little tweaking and we can make it all better. Unfortunately, I only got 40 seconds left, so I'm not able to go any deeper in it. But I do want to encourage people to get more information. Where do they go to?
You can go to the book site, America3.0.com, which all words, or you can go to Amazon.com and look up the book, America 3.0, Rebooting America, New Age of Prosperity, and Why America's Best Days Are Yet to Come.
I'm going to keep it simple. America30.com?
America3.0.com.
3.0.com. And again, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciated your time learning more about the book. James Bennett, author with Michael Lotus, and we've been interviewing James. And thanks for your time.
My pleasure, Kevin. Bye. All
right. When we come back tomorrow, we're, of course, as always, going to have much more for you. Boy, time goes fast when you're having fun. I hope you have a great weekend, but I hope you spend some of your time right here on this great station.